All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with a smiling Drew Dinsick. We're going to take a break from the college basketball today, Drew, and talk Indian Wells, bit of tennis ball. We're going to bring in Caitlin Thompson of Racket Magazine to discuss Tuesday's matches as well as the pricing for the quarter winners and outrights. And then we'll wrap the show talking a bit of NBA, some interesting games tonight on the ledger, including Raptors home to the suddenly kind of flailing Denver Nuggets, and then the surging Milwaukee Bucks against the kind of flailing Phoenix Suns. But Drew, how are you? What's on your mind?
Well, tennis. I am super excited that we're doing an entire show dedicated to the Indian Wells, tournament here. Okay. There is a specific day that every tennis handicapper and fan remembers fondly in the middle of the summer called Manic Monday at Wimbledon, where they do all of the round 4 matches for the men's and women's on the same day. And it is just an absolute fire hose of amazing tennis and incredible competition. And they have set that up for today on Tuesday at Indian Wells. And the field is strong as you would ever have hoped, particularly on the women's side, where it's just a who's who of past Slam champions and or Slam finalists. And the men's side has delivered incredible drama to this point as well, even in the absence of Djokovic or Nadal, maybe thanks to the absence of Djokovic and Nadal. But the overall vibe out at Indian Wells is incredibly hot, setting all-time attendance records out there. The buzz around the sport of tennis has never been greater, and the actual quality of tennis that we're seeing has lived up to the quality of opponents. So, been a very fun tournament so far, and very excited to see today's matches play out.
Indeed. All right, let's bring in Caitlin Thompson of Racket Magazine. Thank you for joining us, Caitlin. Always a pleasure. Let's jump straight into it. Let's talk the women's side. Let's talk about Petra Kvitova, who is a plus 165 underdog to Jess Pegula. What do you make of this one, Caitlin?
I have to give the edge to Pegula. The courts being a little bit slower benefit her. She's a little bit more in form. She's had a monster hard court season. She even won an exhibition title, which, usually we don't put too much credence in exos. But she won an exhibition title earlier this year with doubles. The court, I think, is going to be a little bit more to her liking. And, listen, Kvitova has a couple slams under her belt. She loves a fast court. That's not what this is, but she comes off an incredible win against Yelena Ostapenko, where if you want to see a frosty, no friend zone little action at the net, go and watch their handshake, or the handshake that didn't happen, because it's pretty good. But yeah, Pegula, I like her odds a little bit, but I hope it's competitive, because it's always fun to see those two getting down and dirty.
Yeah, I agree. Kvitova has the head-to-head edge 3-1. However, Pegula playing much better tennis of late. I say of late in the year 2023. She had a little bit of a swoon there in the month of February. Wasn't playing her best, but she seems to have snapped out of it. Plays some of her best tennis on U.S. soil. So Pegula for me as well here. In fact, I think she can come through in straight sets. 2-0 would be the angle I would look to attack at plus 120. Moving down the card, Maria Sakkari, who was last year's finalist, of course, famously Breakpoint featured finalist at Indian Wells last year, is a small dog to Karolina Pliskova. Market has been kind of two-way action here, where we've seen some support come in for Pliskova early, but then it's been largely Sakkari since. Now, Sakkari was very unimpressive against over the weekend in getting to this point of the tournament, and people have been, I think, excited to try to fade her, but she showed some mental toughness coming through her round 3 match to get to this point. What do you make of her particular skill set for this court, and can she replicate the success we saw from her last year against a player like Pliskova, who may be somewhat one-dimensional?
Pliskova is certainly a one-dimensional player, and the fact that the court's a little bit slow traditionally, again, very much favors Sakkari, who's a better athlete. She's got more tools. She's faster. Pliskova likes to hit a fast, hard ball that, kind of pushes her opponent, around grass. The faster hard court certainly is what she favors. But I kind of understand why this is a little bit of a toss-up. Sakkari did not look very impressive, as you said, over the weekend. She's really struggled a little bit in form, and I think she's somebody for whom attention, pressure, expectations has not really been very beneficial for her. That said, she could not be a sort of better athlete. And I think if she takes away from her last match, which was a little bit of a struggle. She should never have been down. She should never have dropped a set, but really had to battle back to take that in a third set the other day. If she takes away from that she can battle through it and she's confident, on a normal day, this is her match to win in straights. That said, Pliskova, has really nothing to lose. She's certainly not expected to do much here. And so I can kind of understand why you might want to take a gamble her way.
Yeah, I think Pliskova is probably the most infuriating player in global tennis to bet against, because when you bet against her, it just feels like you just don't understand why she's not losing, because she is so one-dimensional. It's like, why can't you just get the ground strokes back, move her around the court? But she just seems to find these big first serves and these big flat winners whenever she needs them. Let's go to Coco Gauff against Rebecca Peterson. Gauff, pretty heavy, minus 550 favorite here. Peterson is plus 380. Any chance of an upset here, Caitlin?
There is a chance, actually. Gauff has not looked very good in this tournament. She is the emotional favorite. She's certainly the headline favorite. And, cheering for an American on American soil, she certainly had the crowd's favorite energy coming into this. Rebecca Peterson can be dangerous. She can push top players, and Coco has looked a little shaky, to be honest. I didn't love what I saw, even though she won in straights the other night when I was watching her in the main stadium. A lot of unforced errors, a lot of shaky forehands. I think players, now that she's a little bit more familiar to them, know how to attack her. They are really picking on that forehand side, which is much, much weaker. And the fact that she's a battler and she's a good athlete doesn't always get her out of pickles. So it's tough to bet against Coco in this kind of matchup because Rebecca Peterson really doesn't exactly have the firepower to take her down. That said, I think it has more to do with Gauff. So if you're feeling a little frisky, it might be an interesting one to, sort of maybe take a chance on. But I don't think there's any way Gauff wins this tournament.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. The hashtag is Cocoverse. Over the games, she tends to make matches longer than they have to be in the blind, and particularly the way she's playing now, this going over 19 and a half games looks like the bet to me. And I had eyes. I was watching very carefully to see what kind of changes Coco made to her game coming into this tournament, because a lot of players kind of use the off season to to tool up, to improve, to work on aspects, and try to kind of bring some new tools in their arsenal. And so I was kind of like, ooh, I wonder if Coco is going to come in and just be like on fire here. It has been the opposite. So a little bit concerning for her as far as the development goes, and reaching the level that I think we all expected she could get to. So a pretty important match to watch. And if she does find some form here, I'll be happy for her, but not exactly expecting it.
Yeah, same.
The opposite is true of the two women who kind of feature in the most competitive match of the day, from what I can tell you. And it is Barbora Krejcikova against our girl, Aryna Sabalenka, the Australian Open champion. Now, Sabalenka had a little bit of an exhale after winning the slam. She lost to Krejcikova in a match that was in her hands over in the Middle East earlier. I guess it was about a month ago. So a little bit of an opportunity here for Aryna to come, to get a little bit of revenge after that sad loss. But you have to give Krejcikova credit, because not only did she back up the Sabalenka win with a title, but she did so by beating Iga Swiatek. What do you make of Krejcikova's rise early this season? And do you think Sabalenka has the answers to get by her on what I would say courts that favor Krejcikova?
Courts certainly favor Krejcikova, and I think about her season thus far as really a return to form. She is dangerous. She has a slam, and she is not afraid of anybody. I got to watch her up close the other night, and she is just smooth as a surgeon. Like, you don't really see her overhitting. You don't really see her making a ton of errors or necessarily doing a ton of flashy stuff. But if I had to say there was a player in the draw who is certainly underrated or slept on, it's Barbora Krejcikova. That said, Sabalenka has the answers for anybody when she's playing her best game. She is, I don't want to say the favorite in every matchup, but the match is certainly on her racket. The match is on her racket whether she's playing Barbora Krejcikova, who I think is a very, very, very tough opponent. Obviously, their result from a couple of weeks ago bears that out. She's not safe with any kind of a lead, not owing to the fact that, she's a little all over the place. If anything, Aryna Sabalenka in the last year has been more mentally dialed in, more focused, more able to kind of weather some rough patches. But Barbora Krejcikova, you just cannot shut the door on her, because she finds a way, and she's really crafty, and she's really sort of calm. It's really fire and ice. So for me, Aryna Sabalenka Barbara Krejcikova is the popcorn match of the day on a day with tons of popcorn matches. So if there's one I was wishing I was sitting courtside for, it would be this one for sure. But I have to say, whoever comes out of this becomes my favorite to win the tournament.
Wow. Okay. That's a bold call. I think these are probably the second and third best players in the world right now. And the presumptive number one is Iga Swiatek, who is minus 105. And Drew has just written off the next 2 months as the Swiatek fiesta. Don't even bother watching the matches in Paris. But when she's minus 105 to win the tournament. And I get it as well. But also Swiatek does show vulnerabilities. I think back to the US swing where it's weird because she won the US Open, but I don't think she was that impressive in the lead up tournaments or in the US Open. She also got trucked by Elena Rybakina down in Melbourne. Do you think anyone can knock off or will knock off Iga at Indian Wells, Caitlin?
I think it might happen today. I don't give Raducanu a huge chance, but Raducanu on her best. The thing about Iga Swiatek is she is so solid everywhere, and she's so hard to beat because she is fast. She's the best mover on tour, and she really has all the tools in terms of a counterpuncher. She's a lot like Novak Djokovic in that way. She doesn't go away. She's got a lot of answers, and you can't really get her on the defensive because she positions herself really well. That said, her ceiling is a little bit lower than what these other players are who are a little bit more offensive. The court is a little slower. So as you said, Drew, I get why on a slow hard court like this, or certainly the clay season, she's got 2 Roland Garroses after all. But, I get why she's certainly the presumptive favorite. She's been breadsticking and bageling everyone. So it's been sort of carnage for her part of the draw. That said, Emma Raducanu, what I've seen in the last couple of days has really impressed me. It wasn't a fluke she won the US Open. It was a lucky draw, but it wasn't a fluke. She's got the game and she's got firepower. Same with Krejcikova or Sabalenka. If you hit through, or Rybakina for that matter, if you hit through Iga and you do it consistently enough, she does not have all the answers. And so for me, somebody's going to have to play the match of their life to take her out. But we've seen people do that pretty regularly, and that's what's so fun about all this variety right now on both the women's, which we've had for a couple years now, but also similarly the men's. This is the best era of tennis that I've seen in generations, and I'm really, really, really excited about it.
Yeah, that all makes sense. A lot of tennis is because you are out there by yourself. A lot of it is a confidence game. And you saw Bibi Andreescu played with confidence last night. She felt like she was in that match, and she certainly was until the very bitter end. She was right there. I guess Raducanu, for what it's worth, played with unbelievable amount of confidence in her US Open title, and then we just have not seen any of that since. And so I guess it's a kind of a matter of, can she kind of keep the mental toughness in this particular match, or can Iga, kind of break her down? That said, Iga, when it gets to clay, like, in my opinion, it's over. And maybe I just need some drama, so I'm like, can Iga win this tournament without dropping a set? Like that brings it a little bit more drama to the table than just kind of knowing the outcome before it starts, which is she's ultimately going to win. But her skill set, as you mentioned, movement is a huge aspect of it. Clay, I think, lends itself a little bit more to having that be a powerful weapon than Indian Wells. I mean, it's slow, hard court, so you have to generate your own power. She can do that, obviously, also. And I think that's kind of what makes her so dynamic. And the WTA lights out, and she's going to have a amount staked on her to win this one. So fingers crossed she keeps going.
Yeah, I think it's a strange thing with Iga where she's so far and away in terms of how the market prices her tier one by herself in almost every tournament. And yet, to your point before, Caitlin, that like when she plays, in particular, when she plays Sabalenka and Rybakina, it feels like the game isn't on her racket. And it depends at the level that the other two can get to because of their ceilings. Anyway, we will hit the men's side of the draw. But firstly, a reminder to download the RotoWorld app to receive breaking player news all season long. Stay ahead of the competition by favoriting players on your roster. Get the latest injury updates, player news, and much more delivered right to your phone. It's available in the App Store today. All right, let's talk the men's side. Francis Tiafoe is minus 475, heavy favorite against Alejandro Tabilo, plus 340. What do you think of Tiafoe's game at the moment, Caitlin? And you expect that he should waltz through this one?
Watts through, maybe not. He hasn't looked incredible, but the thing about Francis is he can win, and he has the sort of chutzpah to get through any kind of a rough patch. Francis's game is never what wins the matches. It's kind of more his heart. His game is imperfect. He doesn't have the enormous weapons the way that a lot of other players do. And it's really, really cool. I just want to acknowledge that there are 2 Chileans in the draw at this moment, this deep, which is such a cool thing, being on the grounds at Indian Wells the last couple of days, seeing so many South Americans. It's just such an awesome reminder that at any time, any corner of the world is sort of poised to jump in here and make themselves heard. That said, it's tough to bet against Francis in this match. He comes in the favorite. He's been in form. And, I think for me, just thinking about a younger, less experienced player in the form of Alejandro Tabilo, he doesn't exactly have what it would take to kind of knock off Francis's kind of consistency, his ability to move, and his ability to kind of close points. That gets much, much harder for Francis, assuming he wins this match, because pretty much everyone else in the draw does. So I actually don't know that Francis is going to get very far after today's match. That said, it's really, really hard to expect him to do anything but take it in straights.
Yeah, he's absolutely a showman. He plays off of the crowd support. If he can kind of get them behind him, I don't see him losing this match. I agree with you. That said, Tabilo, he qualified here. He's beaten Cressy. He's beaten some pretty powerful players, although no one of quality that Francis is bringing to the table. So I think we'll give Francis a pass through to the quarterfinals here, where I agree with you. His tournament likely ends. An interesting matchup on the top half of the draw, not the one we were expecting. Jannik Sinner taking on Stan Wawrinka. If you haven't heard of Stan Wawrinka, you haven't been paying attention to tennis long enough. He takes out the young Holger Rune yesterday in what was one of the more fun matches of the entire tournament so far. And now Jannik Sinner takes on Stan, and these guys have a little bit of history, which is not obvious for the young and upcomer versus the wily veteran. I've been impressed by Stan's game so far. He obviously has a mental toughness that a lot of players don't, having won Roland Garros a couple of times and the U.S. Open. He's definitely been, he's been able to bring a level that a lot of other players have not. But as we kind of look at the future of men's tennis, it's tough not to see Sinner being involved in the later stages of every slam for the next 5-10 years. He just is that high of a ceiling in terms of his abilities. Sinner hasn't looked amazing this tournament so far, and I don't know that this is exactly the type of conditions that I would really love to be super involved with him at a price like -475. What is your overall take on Sinner as a player, and in particular his matchup against a guy like Stan the Man?
I think most days Sinner wins this. Sinner's one of the most exciting players in the tournament. And don't forget, he had match points against Carlos Alcaraz, who was far and away the most compelling player, certainly of the U.S. Open,
we don't
which
forget.
I'm sure we're going to talk about. But Sinner really is in there. He's a little bit unassuming, but his game has absolutely no weaknesses. He's fast as lightning. And what he kind of doesn't provide in the same amount of caliber showmanship, he has just absolute workhorse production. So he's fast, hits big off of every shot. And to me, he's going to be sort of a perennial top 5. He's going to have a handful of slams. That said, his season this year has not been, he hasn't really caught fire yet. This isn't exactly the part of the year. I think he likes to play his way into form. And Stan Wawrinka is playing with absolute house money. I mean, he has absolutely nothing to lose. He's been injured the last couple of years. He knew he was sort of on the road to recovery in a long way. As you get older, obviously, the injuries take longer to bounce back from. But Stan really has the kind of firepower that has gotten him the clay titles, specifically on Roland Garros' clay. And we keep talking about that because Indian Wells, it cannot be overstated, it's so slow. Playing on those gritty courts is really, really not favorable for the guys who like the pace as much as the people who like Stan, have time to set it up and wallop it. So this is a really tough matchup. I actually am this is another one of those ones where I can see it going either way. I kind of give Stan the slight favorite. I think he's got a little bit more momentum. I think he's got a little bit more experience. And I think he's playing on fire right now in a way that gets him emotionally amped to continue taking out these young guys. And we're on the subject of Rune. Just some unsolicited advice. This guy needs to. His game is so spectacular, but he needs to check himself a little bit before he wrecks himself with some of the elders of the game, because you can't come talking trash to Stan Wawrinka and then go down swinging. If you're gonna come at the king, don't miss. So Wawrinka, I think, has the slight edge today against Sinner.
Interesting. Yeah. And Sinner, I think for a player of his talent, is higher variance match to match than he should be. Sinner's not afraid to just go through a set where he completely loses his forehand or whatever and just kind of goes off the rails. Player who looked like he was going off the rails a little bit was Daniil Medvedev. And then all of a sudden he just turns it around, wins back-to-back in Rotterdam, beating Jannik Sinner, coming from a set down in the final, and then backing it up, winning in Dubai as well. And now he's a minus 400 favorite against Alexander Zverev, still on the comeback trail, who's plus 290. What have you seen from Medvedev lately, Caitlin?
I've seen him take a lot of sort of walkabouts mentally and still get it done. And so to me, that's actually a great sign. But Daniil Medvedev doesn't need to play his best tennis to win. And the bag of tricks, the creativity, the speed, the fact that he hits a drastically different ball than anybody else really in the draw. Honestly, anybody else really in tennis. It's kind of hard to describe how different his game is. It's sort of like a permanent knuckleballer, maybe. So for me, he's supremely dangerous, maybe not more dangerous than he is now, where he's not lost matches coming into this very often, and he's won a whole bunch of hard court titles. So for me, he's actually kind of the overwhelming favorite, not only for this match, but for the tournament.
Wow. Interesting. He's been on record. Doesn't love the conditions, doesn't love the court speed. Definitely. I think his quote as he lost the second set in very improbable fashion last match was something along the lines of, "This is the fact sheet says this is a hard court, but it's not a hard court." I think, maybe he's playing a little possum. Maybe he's got some tools, but, we haven't really seen a lot of like really cool budding rivalries in the next gen players. So, the big four, when they were playing each other in all of these high leverage matches, tournament in, tournament out, it afforded us an opportunity to kind of really do a good job of matching those guys up and figuring out, seeing some rivalries bud. And then, of the next gen guys, this feels like one of those matches where you have, some decent history here. Zverev won the first four head-to-heads between these guys, and since then Medvedev has leveled the field through 2020 and 2021. He basically fed Zverev his lunch, but they have a 6-6 career head-to-head, and this is now going to break the tie. One would assume it goes to Medvedev, but Zverev has had some pretty high moments at Indian Wells. I'll never forget, he almost beat Rafa Nadal here as he was kind of a breakout. He did a little bit of a shanked it into the net on a volley that would have won him the match, basically. But that said, I'm excited to see him back into some sort of form after what was a pretty brutal injury at Roland Garros last year. So cheering for a good match here. Hopefully it goes the distance and we get to see these guys continue to develop their rivalry. Another kind of fascinating potential match is this Carlos Alcaraz Jack Draper match. So Draper, of course, comes through yesterday, beating his lifetime hero, Andy Murray. How do you get back up emotionally after a match like that, particularly when you're taking on a guy who may be the number one player in the world, at least for these conditions?
It's a tall order, and I think a lot of us favored Jack Draper in that Andy Murray match. The heart obviously always wants to go with Sir Andy, and he's, despite his metal hips, always battles to the end and surprises us. That said, Jack Draper was somebody a lot of people looked at as being very dangerous in the Australian Open draw when he drew Rafa against the first round. Really made Rafa dial in and show up prepared to play because of the amount of talent he has. I think just Carlitos has too much firepower, too many answers, too much variety, too much of a game, frankly, for Draper to do much with. But he's very young, and this will be, I think, kind of to your point earlier, Drew, just sort of a preview of things to come. I think Draper is essentially kind of making the argument that he needs to be considered as part of this next generation, this next generation of, your Sinners, your Alcarazes, your Runes, really the ones for whom the lost generation of your Zverevs team snagged a slam, obviously, but like Kachanov and a bunch of players who kind of just really couldn't get it done between the big three and now. And I think for me, I'm ready to just move on to the now, because I think this kind of Jack Draper, Carlitos Alcaraz match is probably one we're going to see a lot more to come. But yeah, giving Alcaraz the edge today, certainly looking at how he's played his way into form. But let's see if Draper can keep it competitive.
Yeah, I think it's promising for Jack Draper that he's only a plus 260 underdog against Alcaraz, and so somewhat in the same sphere. Last one for you, Caitlin, before we let you go. I think you said before that you liked Daniil Medvedev to win the tournament. He's plus 155, and the favorite Alcaraz is plus 300. I think who Drew and I are cheering for. Do you think? I mean, plus 155. That's saying that Medvedev is about a 40% chance to win the tournament. Do you think he's more likely than the field to win?
I do. Despite his protestations, I watched that match where he dropped a set. It's not because he played badly. It's because he got bored and decided to sort of take a little bit of vacation. I don't want to portray him as some, master of the universe who can, will tennis balls to his desire. But he is really somebody who doesn't need rhythm, and he doesn't necessarily need to feel particularly good to win. The thing that is so great about Carlos Alcaraz, the thing that we like about him, the thing that it makes him exciting to watch is he has just such technical prowess and surprising sort of whimsy. He kind of really does combine a lot of the movement of Novak with the battling of Rafa, with the shot making and kind of creation instinct or aggression that Roger Federer does, which is why he has all these comparisons. That said, and I'm going to put it bluntly, sometimes he plays pretty stupid. Like, he doesn't make great shot selection, and he can really, I think, lack some discipline. Now, that doesn't hurt him because he's so much more athletic and fast than almost everyone else he plays, kind of with the exception of Daniil Medvedev. And so for me, whether Medvedev is feeling it or not, when he is in a rhythm, which we've seen coming through this season that he certainly is, I have to say that, he's kind of clearing away, for me, the favorite of the tournament, just looking at match to match how he's played. And don't forget, Carlos has been coming off a pretty severe ab injury. Obviously he did pretty well in the South America swing just now, but I think he's still very much on the comeback. And so for me, despite the fact that Taylor Fritz won this last year, despite the fact that you've got some other great players in the draw, Rublev is really, really tough not to like. Same thing with Felix Auger-Aliassime, my fellow Montrealer, who I love and adore and watch playing with, a complete rapture given how smooth he is. It really is, I think, coming down to, for me, Daniil Medvedev, Carlos Alcaraz, ultimately.
Well, I'll tell you what, the Indian Wells traditionally is like a very important tournament to pay attention to because it portends so much that happens during the balance of the season. And we really have no idea how Medvedev and Alcaraz match up. So if the tennis gods are paying attention, they will give us that final so that we can kind of help sort out how those two players will play against each other for the balance of the season, because a lot of tournaments are going to come down to that particular matchup. And I think if you're going to give the hat tip to who is the smarter player on tour, of the two, it is very clearly Medvedev. That dude is brilliant. And he could craft his way into a win, but as Jay mentioned, we're pulling for Carlitos this week. So best of luck to the Medvedev fans.
All right. Well, Caitlin, thank you so much for joining us. Can you tell people where to follow your content?
Sure thing. We are Racket Magazine, Racket Instagram, Racket Twitter, and we were just at Indian Wells taping a whole lot of podcasts, including one with Felix Auger-Aliassime. So check us out. It's the Renee Stubbs podcast, courtesy of Racket Network. All things Racket is me. So thanks again for having me. Always great to chat with you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. All right. Before we jump into the association, a reminder about the Roto World Baseball Draft Guide. New MLB season, Drew, is coming up. New rules, new stars. So pair it with the Roto World Draft Guide. Get all the player profiles, rankings, and projections you need to hit your draft out of the park. Go to NBCSportsEdge.com/draft guide and use code PENNAT25 to save 25% at checkout. All right, a lot happened in basketball yesterday. As a man who's cheering vociferously against the Boston Celtics, just an absolutely painful but needed loss to the Houston Rockets in the end. I don't know how the Houston Rockets win any basketball games based on what they showed last night. It's been a while since I've watched Rockets basketball, and it will be a while before I watch it again. But we got a pretty good slate tonight. Some really interesting games. I think probably the highlight is Bucks at Suns. Bucks 2-point favorites at the moment. Looks like Chris Middleton won't go, but I suspect Giannis probably will. And all of a sudden that team's got a lot of depth to probably withstand Middleton's absence in a way that they couldn't as much at the start of the season. But what do you like on the card tonight?
Basketball still being played? No, I'm joking. Last night's results were just especially the late games. The Warriors winning, and on top of the Kings collapsing. Oh, that was a tough one. I think Suns or pass in the Bucks matchup is the only one that really stands out to me. At some point, the Bucks have to. The Bucks have to yield. They have to. The way that they're being priced on the road against other good teams, this is unsustainable. And I agree with you. I think there may be some surprise rest here. Suns, after last night's performance, I think have to come out fired up. So Suns money line plus 105. That's a bet for me, and that's really the only thing that really speaks to me on tonight's card, outside of the New York Knicks, who are taking on Portland. I think that should be a 4-point spread. They're 2-point favorites on the road. Give me the Knicks in that spot. Give me Jalen Brunson at some point back soon, please.
He'll be back. He won't be back tonight, but I think he'll be back. They've got another 3 days off after tonight's game. And then they play again, I believe, on Saturday against the Nuggets. I think he'll probably be back for that game, and certainly hope he is. I agree. I think the Knicks -2 is the best bet on the just because Lillard and Grant are both listed questionable. And it's always a concern so Damian Lillard on Sunday, he went from probable with the calf injury to out. And when you go from probable to out, and then your team, which is now, I think, in a position to tank because their season is getting away from them, I suspect that there is a pretty high chance that both Lillard and Grant are out. And if that's the case, then, I mean, even with the Knicks without Brunson, is that line like 7? 8?
7 or 8. Yeah, seven or 8. Yeah, it ought to be. I mean, Dame means that much right now to the spread for the Blazers. And I kind of agree with your overall take.
Yeah, I think, and the Knicks, who have been painful to watch the past week, as Julius Randle goes full Julius Randle, and you never want to go full Julius Randle, Drew. And RJ Barrett, who to his credit played really well against the Lakers, but was having a really rough stretch. It is, if you watch Knicks games and you're on the Knicks, you're just praying to get through the first 6 minutes until they bring in Josh Hart for RJ Barrett. And then all of a sudden the team starts to play better. But I think Tibbs is starting to realize that. All right, looks like we've got a question on Jokic MVP.
Got to hear your take on this.
So is Jokic still winning MVP? Society is determined to conspire against Nikola Jokic, and a lot of steam has been on Embiid. Giannis is still going to be heard from. The whole thing is going to come down to there is a round robin of games that starts a bit over a week from now, where March 25th, Bucks at Nuggets. Bucks are on a back-to-back. March 27th, Sixers at Nuggets. And then a few days after that, Sixers at Bucks. And if one of those guys sweeps those matchups, then they're in the box seat. I do think if Jokic beats Giannis and Embiid back-to-back, which is about a plus 190 shot to be able to do that, then I think it's close to a wrap. Okay. If he wins both of those games, it is close to a wrap. If he loses both of those games, I think it's close to a wrap the other way. So I think that is largely where it's going to be. I think Jokic is a bit short in the market now, but yeah, there's still a lot to play out. But what do you think, Drew?
I mean, the way the NBA season has gone for me, I'm expecting the most absolute heartache, which would be a Giannis MVP. That would break me. And so I'm prepared for the Bucks to sweep this and somehow keep winning, even though the entire scheduling calendar is absolutely against them from here on into the end of the season. Like, this team should have to start losing. I think Embiid is worth a play at plus 225. I think should be shorter than that because of the sentiment publicly and because the door is still open for them to steal the 1 seed in the East. The Celtics have fallen to where the Sixers could realistically go 0-4 against the Celtics on the balance of the season and still somehow win the Atlantic and get the 1 seed is mind blowing to me. I think Embiid, if he's the 1 or the 2 seed in the East, is going to have a lot of tailwind. The fact that the Nuggets in general aren't getting a ton of high-profile games outside of these kind of 2 that you mentioned, I think is a potential issue for Jokic. Should he be the MVP? Yes, but that's not always how this award gets voted on.
Yes, and I think it's going to largely hinge on one. If Embiid gets the 2 seed and is within 2 games of Giannis, then I think Embiid will probably win. But if he's the 3 seed, then it becomes a little bit more chaotic.
Yep.
I think as well that there's been some surge behind Giannis. Giannis has no actual case. Like, he doesn't deserve to be. Like, I think Embiid has a case. And if people were to vote Embiid over Jokic, I would disagree with that. I don't think that's a travesty, though. But Giannis is basically just like the one sentence of he's the best player in the world and he's on the best team. And there's this idea that Giannis's teammates suck and he's dragged into the Are you kidding me? Brook Lopez is minus 150 to win Defensive Player of the Year. Drew Holiday was an all-star. By the way, Drew Holiday, the only all-star teammate for any of these 3 guys, because James Harden didn't make the all-star team, and Jokic has never played with an all-star. So, I don't know. There's a lot of weird discourse around, most of it very bad. I think Kevin Pelton wrote a really good article about Giannis and his MVP case, settling on the fact that, Giannis is having a great year, and he's always going to have a great year. He's probably the best player in the world, but he's having a down year by his standards. And probably shouldn't be in the top tier, but he may well be, and people love voting for the best guy on the best team, so I certainly wouldn't write him off. But it's going to come down to those 2 Denver games, particularly against Milwaukee and Philly.
My main takeaway from what you just said is that Jokic has never been able to elevate a teammate to all-star status, so that's going to count against him for me. But no, in seriousness though, like, these guys are all supremely amazing players, and the fact that you have 3 of them at specifically with their size, and they've all had relatively healthy seasons, I think we're blessed as NBA fans. But yeah, I mean, an Embiid steal here would make me happy financially, but would kind of frustrate me from like the award being correctly doled out. But that said, Sixers need to be in the top 2 for him to realistically get it, I think.
I agree. And I'm going to push back on one thing a little bit, where I don't like the idea that we have to clarify that all these 3 guys are awesome and there's no wrong choice. Like, there is a wrong choice. The wrong choice is Giannis. Like, you pick the other 2 guys, Giannis, he's the wrong choice. We don't need to clarify that they're all awesome. Like, do we need to clarify that, Cam Reddish is way better than the average basketball player? It's amazing. Cam Reddish is in the NBA. What an achievement. Like, no, it's fine. The job is to pick one.
Yeah, he would kill me.
The job is to pick one, and the right choice is Jokic, and it might end up being Embiid by the end of the season. Maybe it'll end up being Giannis, but I think he's coming from a long way back on merit. But yeah, we'll see how it plays out, and I'll be watching those games on March 25 and March 27 very anxiously. All right, we are done. Don't forget to check out NBCSportsEdge.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to subscribe and rate us. Thanks again to Caitlin Thompson. Thanks again to you, Drew Dinsick. And we'll be back tomorrow.